All right, you maggots, listen up. Now I've had more and more trolls come in. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers. So the algorithm of YouTube is showing my videos to more kinds of people, and they're bitching and moaning that I complain too much or this that, and they never bother to pay attention to the fact that my videos are for me. If you enjoy them, you're lucky. All right, I do this just for just this has been an adventure. I'm shooting for the 1,000 people, not to become monetized, just for another goal in my life. We're almost there, and you're not. I noticed the guys that always make nasty comments never have any videos. All right? They don't want to show anybody their real name. So here we go on another trip back in time. Oh, why don't you move on? Anyway, the earliest thing in electronics that I remember. Now, my dad was building Heathkits, and we had a radio always going in the house. But that's not what really started it. I went down to Elizabeth, New Jersey, and I stayed over at my cousin Dory's house. And upstairs was cousin Stephen. And one night he invited us up to see his horror room, or his House of Horrors. And it was his bedroom, and he had it all wired up with wires and buzzers and flashing lights. And we walked through from one. I think we went in one door and out another. I don't remember. But in other words, we had to walk through his bedroom, and he had all these buzzers and bells going off and lights and everything. And I came out, and then my parents had come to pick me up, and I was telling them, I said, "Oh yeah, Stephen, he wired up all this lights and all this stuff, and And I think my father sort of kept note or took note. So that Christmas, I got the it's not a Hellcrafters. It's a Heathkit. Would it be a Heathkit? No, it was a Remco crystal radio, and you could still buy them used on eBay. It's a plastic thing, a little cabinet. It's got like a radar beacon on the top or a round disc. Doesn't do anything. A lot of the controls on the Remco radio don't do anything. But it's got a crystal radio in there. And when you move the lever back and forth, depending on which model, one model, it moves a piston in and out of a coil. And in one model, it changes the connections to the coil. It's a slide connection. So anyway, my father buys me one of these for Christmas. He puts it together. I have it in my bedroom. It's one of the few things my mother let me have in my bedroom where she didn't wrap it all up and throw it in the garbage. So anyway, I had this radio, and it had a old-fashioned. It wasn't a crystal radio headphone. It was a regular magnetic headphone with probably 2,000 ohms of wire, and it only got WNEW, 1130 in New York, WNEW, Make Believe Ballroom is on the air, whatever. So I remember the song, some of the songs, Sugar in the Morning, Sugar in the Evening, North to Alaska was one of the songs. And then right after that, a couple years later, my dad bought me the Heathkit one transistor radio, which used a D battery. And you just put the D battery in there and you just let it run. And it was one transistor, and it got three stations. It got WABC, WNEW, and WOR. And that was the next level. All right, so we got that. In between, I had phonographs, and I think I was hitting 8 years old. I was becoming self-aware, and I was making antennas for it, and winding antennas, and running grounds, and all that. And this is what you go through. And then at that same time, my dad had a TV repair shop with my uncle, and I started coming home from up there past garbage bins, and I would see a radio out for garbage, and I'd drag it home. And my dad had a tube tester, and sometimes I'd use the tube tester up in the shop, and I test all the tubes, and it would always be the volume control, the filter capacitor would be shot, and the speaker would have a fork through it. And then a lot of radios, people took the tubes out thinking that they were going to be worth money in the future. Never happened. So you would pull stuff out of the garbage, and then, or I would, and then I would work on it, get it working, trade it off to someone, throw it out. I wouldn't break the tubes. I was always, actually, back then they were metal. They were 6SK7s and stuff like that. So we got the crystal radios, one transistor radio, uh, radios out of the garbage. I was trying to build a wireless transmitter, and I just recently found out what I did wrong on that one. They show two diagrams on the same page, but they're two different wire-ups of two different tubes. That's what confused me. So I wired one part of the circuit for one type of tube, and the other part for the other type of tube. It's a 1S4 something tube. Well, anyway, so you go through these stages, and at some point, I wasn't in high school yet, but I started putting. They weren't 8-track players. They were maybe 4-track players. The capstan wheel was in the unit itself, and you put the 4-track tape in the radio, and then the lever, you pull the lever and it would switch from radio to tape, and it went through the radio. I take that back. The first one had a radio in it. The next one I hooked in for someone else. They got it off a friend. They bought it, and he says, I can't get this thing to work right. So I went over there and I was saying, oh, I know what this is. I said, you have to take your radio and put it into this hole, which was a Motorola plug, and then back out to the antenna. And then you get one channel out through the speaker in the back of the car, and then the other channel comes out of the radio. So he's looking at me. This is my friend. He's coming up tomorrow. He comes up from Florida to do the train show. And he turns the radio dial down, and I said, put a tape in. And he could hear it. I said, that's channel 1, and the other channel's down the back. That's how they did it. And when you flip the lever off the tape, it would then reconnect the outside antenna back to the radio. So this is early, before 8-track. Then 8-tracks come out. I became the guy. I don't think I had a driver's license at that time, but I didn't have a car. And everybody was coming down to my house in high school and giving me 8-track players to work on. So a lot of stuff was stolen. They'd go steal it out of a guy's car. And when they bring it to me, if I saw the wires were cut off real close to the body of the 8-track, I said, I'm not going in there. Sometimes they said they got it at a junkyard. And I said, I can go in there and troubleshoot around and figure out what it is, but it was in bad shape physically. So I went to the 8-tracks, and then the other things you go to were real high-end stereos, hooking them up for people. And then in the car, when you hook in the stereo up, I wanted to show you this. This nibbling tool is very similar, the way it works at the end, to a Burns-O-Matic nibbling tool. And that was to cut the deck in the back of the car. And this, I used to use these too. When cars came out, they sometimes had a speaker hole cut out in the back of the car. Just one, because there was no stereo yet. And then as people got newer cars, you had to peel away part of the rubber in the back and then cut hole through the cloth. There was all different ways, but there were radios. The back deck had no oval hole for the 6x9. And I became the guy that would lay on his back with a drill. I would put a drill bit real far into the drill, into the Black & Decker 1995 quarter-inch drill. I think it might have been 3/8. It was a 3/8. You put the drill back way deep, and you mark your oval hole underneath the deck in the back by the trunk. And now you drill a series of holes all the way around, and then you get a file, a needle file. One guy called it. I called it a machinist, a toolmaker's file, and you go up and down in the hole. So you drill a bunch of bigger holes, smaller holes in between, and try to get the holes almost to touch each other. And then you take a file and you file all the way around, and now you take out the blank, and now you measure for the 4 holes for the speaker, and you put it in. And back in those days, 2 guys sold a Spark-O-Matic. This will bring a smile to some of your faces. Cheap stores sold Spark-O-Matics, and the 8-track deck was a Tena Mini 8, which was it was actually a really good 8-track player. It was a little more expensive, and it was smaller. And so you had your Tena Mini 8. Then I went to tech school, and I became good at repairing all different things. And people got into scanners, police radios. And then when I worked for Radio Shack, CB radio took off, and it got crazy. And I had gone to school for antennas, the feed line, SWR. I understand all those terms and how they actually applied to installing something in a car, the ground. And then you had the guy that worked with me that kept saying, run a wire directly to the battery. You know, that's an old woman's tale. When you do that, you get all kinds of car noise on it. And then you have to put a suppressor in line with that, and that knocks the power down, because if you open up a suppressor, and what was it? There would be an alternator line noise suppressor. It's got a bunch of wire in there, which it causes a drop, and you lose the voltage that you got from going directly to the battery. But you end up getting the noise from the battery and the generator, and now you get rid of it. Now you got the drop that you were trying to get rid of. If you go directly to accessories, as long as it's just a 5-watt CB, you go to accessories, and you don't get any antenna wind up, generator wind. If the car back then was a decent car, the accessory plug also would go on when the car was sitting still, and you went to the left with the key. And then when you went right to the key, it would also work. And when the key was out, it was off. That was the accessory line that had a capacitor and an inductor in it, and that would get rid of your noises from the car. And I was an installer. I would install CB radios in the fire zone in front of the Radio Shack in West Bell Plaza in Wayne. I was the guy that put in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of radios. I was the guy that would troubleshoot and find the fact that they ran the wire under the rug and put it under the back seat of the car. And when somebody got in the car, they would crush the, what was it, PL? I'm going to say PL259. That's the plug. RG59, right? Yeah. They would crush the wire, and it would cause, the radio would still receive, but it would cause, if you put the SWR meter on there, you would have a high SWR. And then I also showed the guys that you could trim the antenna, the base load of the antenna that went on the trunk mount. You take that metal rod out and you cut off the bottom of it. And I went and bought a bolt cutter. We cut the bottom off and we tuned it for channels 19. 19 was for the truckers channel. That's what you tuned the CB radio for. You wanted the most power out on channel 19. Now, there was a fiberglass insert that went on the trunk mount. It was a rod, but it was fiberglass. And on the bottom of it, it had a metal tip. And the guys that worked at the Radio Shack kept saying, as soon as we cut the bottom off the fiberglass, it don't work anymore. And I looked at it, and in the fiberglass was a piece of copper. It went down to the bottom, it was soldered. So when you cut the bottom of the rod, it would disconnect the center conductor, so the antenna wouldn't work. So I showed them, we took the black tip off, we tuned it for 19, I said, and then we would glue the tip back on the top of the rod, which went on the trunk mount. There was a white fiberglass. It was about 3 foot long, and it was a little bit more classier than the metal rod. Now, the other tricks we used to run into was, guy would come in, he says, I can't hear nothing with my CB radio, it's all dead. So I'd come out to the car, I'd unscrew the back of the PL259, unscrew it, and then I'd put a wire in there, and I'd hear, you know, the background noise, and then I'd put the connector back on, I'd go in the back of the car, and I would unscrew the antenna off the base. So base mount for the trunk lid, and there was another one that went on the bumper. And you would unscrew it, and you would be filled with water. A guy took the car to the car wash, and when he got to the car wash, the guy at the car wash says, you have to take those antennas off. They can get twisted in the brushes. And they would take it off. They'd go through the car wash, and then the antenna, the cup at the bottom that held the antenna would get filled with water. So I became an expert on that. And a lot of the other Radio Shacks, they would send the guys down to me to make sure I was there, and I'd come out and solve the problem, 1, 2, 3. And I would get a slice of pizza and a soda at was it Mr. Pizza? Well, anyway, in the Westboro Plaza, we had a pizzeria, and a lot of people would say, "What do I owe you? Slice of pizza, a Coke, whatever size you want to buy." There you go. Off they go. I'd be in the Radio Shack waiting on customers, and the customer was all happy, come in with his my slice of pizza, and a soda, a Coke. It was always a Coke. So anyway, that's the thing that kept us busy, man. CB radio came along, and then what was the next thing? And then when I was younger, between the Crystal radio things, we got heavily into walkie-talkies. That was our cell phone back then, and then that evolved into being on CB, and then shortwave radios. I went to tech school. I bought a really good shortwave radio from a guy in tech school that just wanted the money so he could go racing with his car. Robert Masker was his name. We used to call him Gearhead. And there were all these people that you interface with, and they had stuff that their parents bought them, trying to get them interested in electronics. And they were only at the school to get the deferment. And then when the deferment went away, they all left the school. Overnight, we had 120-something guys in the 2 classes. They went away, and we combined to 1 class. So I went to tech school. I come out, RCA, working on various projects when I worked at RCA. The clocks, digital clocks, took a big part of my life, fixing them for people, trying different types. The other thing would be digital thermometers. Went through that phase. And then I'm sitting at a house, and I'm mentioning something, and the girl there says, "Well, once a week they show a movie on such and such a channel, but it's scrambled." Once a week? Yeah, once a week, every Thursday they show just 1 movie. So I went home that night and turned on. It was on. It was scrambled, and that became a big thing for me. I don't think I had cable television yet in our neighborhood. Well, anyway, I worked everything. A friend of mine sent me schematics. I had schematics, but what I was doing wrong was I was trying to put these circuits into a tube radio, or tube television. They weren't reacting fast enough to the horizontal sync pulse, and the sound was working. So then finally it dawned on me, maybe I'll go get a cheap television set and bring it home. And when I was I'm telling the guy behind the counter, and he's working part-time. He's working in Singer Kierfile. He's into electronics. And I'm giving him copies of my TV decoder, and I'm saying, I'm pretty sure this is the problem. So I got a black and white digital set, black and white transistor set. And he found one in the back that had a schematic with it. And he knew what I wanted. So he come out with it. He goes, "I got this one with a schematic." He says, "It's an open box. I can give it to you really cheap." And I gave him schematics, and I checked with him a week later. He got his working. So a lot of us at work, I'd say the smarter techs, the ones that thought they were smart couldn't get it to work. But we all had WHT through the air television, and later on it would shut off at 12 o'clock midnight. They would come back on, play Angel in the Centerfold, and they would show censored adult movies. They weren't full XXX. And we would be talking it the next day at work. And you could see all those guys that thought they were smart steaming, absolutely steaming. And then little by little, computers started showing up. And I bought a Commodore VIC-20. Big mistake. I was going to get the 64. Someone talked me out of it. That's when I started learning. Stop listening to other people. So I got the Commodore 64, VIC-20. I learned a lot on that. Started learning my basic. And then when I left TRW, I quit. I bought a computer to do resumes. And of course, that's when I got drawn into it. I mean, full time. You're like, you get so into it when it stops working or it's not working right, you can't see anything else. And that's what happens. And then when I was working at TRW, we used to take a Silence 700. It has a keyboard. You put the telephone receiver in there and the headphone, or the mic and the headset in it, and you could dial a phone number, and it would dial out, and it would get the airport, and you could get the weather printed on thermal fax paper. And that was my first time seeing a bulletin board. And then when I got the computer, I bought a modem, and I started dialing up these different places. And then before you know it, I found that eHost or whatever it was called something host, mHost, rHost. And I got a copy of that, and I paid for it. It was like 75 bucks. And I got a separate phone line, and people would call in and get files off of it. And it just, the software just wasn't any good. In a certain way, I contacted the guy, and then he refused to change 2 letters for me. I asked him, please, well, you wouldn't do it. So I went to PC board. I went all through the bulletin board stages, and it comes to an end after a while. You can't do anything really new. Towards the end, I went over, and there was a guy that had a hotel over in New York. It wasn't a real hotel. It was an online hotel. And it was free for me to call. It might have been West New York or whatever. And that was the other thing I did on my bulletin board. I had a page that come up. I told you it did the weather and all that. Another page would come up and show you all the area codes you could call for free based on where you lived. And nobody, it's in the phone book, but no one else knew that existed. I was the guy that taught people. You can call all these bulletin boards, and it won't cost you any extra phone money. It'll just be a local call. I pioneered that whole concept. Other people, they would call any number they found because there was a bulletin board list. But anyway, I called this hotel, and I spent weeks going in there, and I couldn't figure it out. I walked from room to room, and then finally, I go to the lobby, and there's the desk, and I see a guy standing at the desk. So you have to actually walk over there, and it was done with ANSI graphics. He goes, "Oh, it's about time you register." It knew how many times I had been to that bulletin board and couldn't figure out how to register. I register, and that opened up a bunch of files, and it also gave me on the log off screen. It gave me this other guy's bulletin board, and that's where mine were. I couldn't get registered in the 202bbs.com for New Jersey, and it was 973 was the other half of it. That guy did not like me. He would not list my bulletin board. But anyway, on the log off screens of the other bulletin boards, they put my phone number because I started doing that. I said, look, on the log off screen, say goodbye, and then say, why don't you try these other bulletin boards? So I did mine first with theirs, and then they put mine. And I was constantly innovating with all different new ideas. And that's what I did. And it came to a steaming end. And I would still get files down from bulletin boards, but like I told you, I quit mine. But at that time I quit mine, I started getting into television decoders. And I had a friend that worked for the cable company, and he would tell me, you know, there's different numbers that go around and all that. And I got a hold of a real box. It was I got to forget the name of the company. It was a box, and I took the EEPROM out, and I was able to read it. They had inverted it. I remade a new EEPROM with somebody else's serial number, and it came right up. It took an hour to load. We had to put on things, but it was a Zenith box. It was a Zenith box. So anyway, I broke the Zenith box by cloning the Zenith box with someone else's serial number. I got a serial number from someone that worked for the cable company who had a box at home that got everything. So all I had to do was figure out how to get that serial number into that EEPROM. And I had an EEPROM programmer because I had built, I have it, it's in the closet over here. Key it in binary. It's all in a single string, and it's the number of the serial of the, it's the serial number of the cable box in binary, and it's inverted. The digit is inverted. So I was able to read what was in that EEPROM, and then realize it took me a while. I did on the kitchen table. I did the full serial number of the box in binary. I broke it all down, and this is before in Windows you had that calculator that could do binary changes. So anyway, So I get it all done, and I realize I'm close. I'm so close. And all of a sudden I said, wait, all these bits are backwards. Ones are zeros, zeros are ones. So I went and I reprogrammed the EEPROM, inverted, and then I took it over to this guy's house. He had that system. We turned the box on, and we were about ready to give up. And he went through the channels. He said, "Wait a minute, this one channel's on." And then I said, "Okay." So I said, "Go to another channel that you don't have yet, that's still scrambled." So we go there and we let it sit there. And after 15 minutes, boing, it loaded it. And then later on, I found out from people there was a certain channel that you put that cable box on, and it would load all the systems, all the things that you were supposed to get for your payment. But that's what I got into. I got into beating the system. Now I had Meadowlands, which was Meadowlands, and it became Comcast, and they had a bi-mode system on there. They kept changing it, and I had it beat before they turned it on. And what I was doing was I knew that the cable guys were putting channels up higher than anybody else could see, but they could see with their special cable box. So I tuned my cable box unit up higher, and I could see the logo for WrestleMania was coming. And I'm sitting at work, and man, they're screaming in people in my ear, "You're not gonna have that cable WrestleMania down by you. I called." Blah blah. Well, I sat there that night, and I had my video recorder. By that time, I had a video recorder, and I had it wired. I could dub stuff from WHT into the video recorder, because WHT, the sound and the picture came separately. But I would convert the picture in the video recorder, and there was a dub jack, and I'd bring the audio out from my WHT box, and I put the dub jack, it's a 1/4-inch jack, I'd put it into the side. All of a sudden, the WHT system in the video recorder is now putting the audio. It took out the bad audio, which is the barker. "You ought to get WHT. It's a really good." All of a sudden, he disappears, and out comes the sound of the movie. So I let it go a few seconds, and I realized that I rewind the tape, and I've dubbed the WHT audio onto the tape, and you can't even do that with the real box. So I gave a couple movies to. If someone says, "Hey, wait a minute, I have WHT." They didn't pay for the adult thing. "I have WHT, and I can't record it because the sound is different." I was laughing. I got that fixed. And then the other thing, my old RCA VCR would make a copy of a copy guarded tape. It would make an exact copy. So I give the tape to somebody, and it was like Back to the Future. He says, "I can't copy it." I said, "Really? That's a copy." He goes, "I can watch it, but I can't copy." He had 2 machines. I said, "I don't know what's going on." Well, what I did was I made an exact copy of a copy guarded tape. And how come was the original RCA video recorders had all this extra stuff in it if you were in a poor signal area. So they would amplify this gain a certain way, and that's how they would keep you from copy guarding. They did a thing with the gain in the retrace or whatever. Anyway, my stupid old RCA video recorder with the 2 turret tuners on it would make an exact copy of a copy guarded tape. Well, anyway, so we go back to WHT, and I'm recording that for people. And at one point, the Football League went on strike, and I was able to record NFL highlight films. WHT couldn't do the games, anyway, they couldn't do games anymore because there was all kinds of strikes and lawsuits. So they were putting on NFL highlight films, and a guy was giving me a tape, a blank tape, and having me record the highlight films. So he could, on Sunday, him and his friends could come over and at least watch NFL highlight films, because the NFL, I think, was on strike. I don't know if it was the NFL. I don't even care. So anyway, the other thing too was I was able to monitor what the cable guys were getting at their house. So I'm sitting there, and you just got to remember, the day before, I got the guy screaming in my ear, and all of a sudden, WrestleMania comes on. It's like a promo, and it's coming up like 10 minutes before the promo. So I get my my VCR all lined up. I make sure the dub jack is out, because if you leave the dub jack in for WHT, you'll get a whole tape of audio from something else. So anyway, pull the dub jack out. I push the record button. All of a sudden, we're in WrestleMania, and I do believe I put it in 4-hour mode. Yeah, and it got the whole of WrestleMania. So the next day, I give it to this other guy at work. And I went and made sure it was on there, and I give it to him. And that guy that was screaming on my ear, he starts again. I said, sorry, I can't help it. I said, my cable box that I have goes up in frequency to a band that the guys from the cable company, they put WrestleMania up there for themselves, but they can't sell it to the public yet because of legal problems and blah, 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 blah. And at that time, when they did do it to the public, you had to go to the cable company, you had to pay a special deposit, and they give you a special box. They didn't want it being stolen. I had it beat. I had all this stuff beat before it even come on. The Playboy channel, it was single mode. Yeah, the Playboy channel was, they just suppressed the horizontal sync pulse, and I beat that one first. And then later on, they put these scramblers in there. And what I had to do was I had to build a notch filter for a certain frequency off after the first sync, and that would let just the good data come through. And then I could watch the hexadecimal code coming from the unit to upstairs at my computer, and then I knew what I had to go down and program the EEPROMs for. And then later on, they just got damn lazy, and they never changed they could change the code every day or every month. And then it gave them so much trouble with people's boxes that they stopped changing. Well, at one point, you have to picture this. I can get everything. And I'm watching this stuff go, this sucks. This is stupid, And I wanted the next project. That's what it was. So I basically started, I didn't disconnect everything, but at some point I did get rid of HBO and the other feed, so I couldn't decode it anymore. I went to an antenna, and I got into decoding stuff through the air off shortwave. I did the RTTY, CW, and then I did the fax, the radio fax. I had that spinning drum I built from scratch. I would spend months on that, and people didn't understand why. I said, I need constant challenge that when I come home from work, that I would work on some really big project. So we went from the spinning drum fax machine. I think it was a GOES 9 satellite that come over the house. I picked it up on a scanner. It was in AM. It was amplitude modulated. It wasn't frequency modulated audio like the radio faxes. And I picked up the thing, and there's a bend in the picture because of the Doppler effect. You read up on all this stuff. Did all that, and then I was at a loss for something. I'm trying to think of the next thing I went into. Oh, I'm up at my friend's vacuum repair shop, and he's mentioning about this. They recommended this he gets this CD magazine, and they recommended this CD for organ music or carousel music. And I always wanted to build a carousel mechanism to read the paper and make the pipes work. Well, I compromised, and I built you go look at one of my videos, it's the crank organ, uses harmonica reeds. And that was 3 years of work. A little each day, and learning to build out of PVC and all that. I learned so much. And then I did a booklet. And I actually did 3 booklets, and the final booklet is called something mechanics, build a simple mechanical crank organ or something like that. And I sold those out of the back of a magazine. I had 3 dealers. And then the internet came along. And the rest is just like, I went from the crank organ to CNC machines. What else I do? The radios, the YouTube. All right. Oh, I had a website where I sold my booklets. Yeah, just one thing after another. Now we're kind of at a screeching halt, and I'm going to hit the 2,000 subscribers, and that's it. That's the goal. And people would say, well, I'd be monetized. I'd get the $100 a month. I don't want the $100 a month. I want the next thing. And that's what I've been telling you a little at a time on what I'm building and stuff. is I need the next project to keep me busy. I go for long walks. I do watch some television. I listen to music. I do some housework. Uh, I cook my own meals. But at some point, you got to have that fire, that thing you want to explore and do. And I built a CW code unit to train me, but I'm not fast enough mentally to do it anymore, or maybe never. I don't really know. But I just want to go through all that stuff that I've gone through, and a lot of you have gone through the same thing. The big mouths, the guys without videos. Oh, that's boring. I don't want to see that. Those people are horrible, and that's why they have this control. You just push the button on their name, it mutes them. See, they can leave me messages, but I can't see them, and they can't tell they're not leaving me messages. You just make them not exist, and that's what I do. I don't like you complain too much. I would never want you as a friend. Guess what? I would never want you as a friend. I know. Yeah, there's people that go around when people start fights in conferences, they think they're going to stop the fight. They're just as annoying as the guy that tells you you complain too much. All right? People do what they're going to do, and this is my videos. And I think that's it. That's it for now. All right, that's it.